Mayor Moore, it is 6 p.m. if you'd like to call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Ms. Burgess. Welcome, everyone, to the joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. Ms. Burgess, if you could give us a roll call.
Councilmember Harvey.
Here.
Councilmember Sparks.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Vice Mayor Landman.
Here.
Mayor Moore.
Here. Thank you very much. Now, if you all would kindly join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And now we'll go ahead and look for approval of the minutes.
Move to approve both minutes.
Councilmember Ford,
There's
I'll second.
just one.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the special closed session May 25th, 21, and the regular meeting of May 25th, 2021. Will we please have a roll call?
Councilmember Harvey.
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to announcements. Prior to that, Mr. Obed, if you would kindly introduce our staff we have present tonight.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So we have myself, obviously, City Manager Damien Obed. We have Angela Corder, the Director of Administrative Services. We have Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. We also have Mike Parrish, our Chief of Police, Noah Houch, our Community Development Director, Lauren Burgess, our City Clerk, and John Bacher, our City Attorney. And I believe we actually have JP Harris, our Senior Planner, here as well tonight.
Thank you. Well, now we'll move on to announcements. This is meeting orientation for new attendees and viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council will consider the item, and citizens are afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens' business item, which is a designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. The City Council may or may not choose to respond to comments as the government code allows. However, if the City Council declines to respond, it should not be perceived as giving credence to or agreeing with any statements that the City Council or its members believe are incorrect, misinformed, or purposefully biased. You'd think I'd memorize that by now, but Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at CotatiCity.org. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up at nixle.com or by texting your zip code 94931 to 888-777. Like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotatiCity.org. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, you can contact us at 707-792-4611. And of course, if you have an emergency, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, Nixle, and Nextdoor. And now we'll look for approval of the final agenda. Do we have any changes on that, Mr. Obed?
No proposed changes.
Thank you. Now we will move on to citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matter not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2021-01, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend time for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. Do we have anyone that would like to speak on citizens' business?
Thank you, Mayor Moore. Checking in with our attendees tonight. If you can, please use the raise hand icon on your smartphone or desktop. If you're dialing in, you can dial *9, and that will also facilitate the raise hand icon. Mayor Moore, it appears that we'll end public comment.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move on to our consent calendar. Any items wishing to be pulled from that from any of the council members? Not seeing any, I would look for a motion.
I'd be happy to move that. This is the Vice Mayor.
Go for it, Mark.
Like I said, I'd be happy to move this.
I'll second them.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
And actually, Mayor, before you vote, I wanted to call out that there was an amendment to the packet for the GAN item. Yeah, that's item 8D.
Okay.
Sorry.
Which has been incorporated into the agenda.
Yes, it was sent out, and also it's on the website as an
Thank
amendment packet.
So would that motion need to be as amended?
I'd be happy to amend it to include that notification.
And I would include my second to include the amendment.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Burgess?
Councilmember Harvey?
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks?
Yes.
Councilmember Ford?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman?
Yes.
Mayor Moore?
Yes, thank you very much. So now we'll move on to direction on future agenda items. Any council member wishing to address that? Vice Mayor Landman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to ask if we might bring to the council a discussion of potentially endorsing the Climate Safe California Plan. I believe many of us have been in contact. It's just a goal for the state to achieve net negative greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And it has a plan in numerous sectors for how to try to achieve that rather important but also rather difficult goal. This comes from the Climate Center and Ann Hancock's group, which I think many of us are familiar with. And it's already been endorsed by many jurisdictions around here, including the Bay Area Quality Management District, Sonoma County Regional Climate Protection Authority, cities of Petaluma, Sebastopol, and the town of Windsor. So I think it's a worthwhile thing for us to discuss and potentially support.
Thank you. I would support bringing that up to an agenda item. I don't see any opposition to that. Okay. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Landman. Councilmember Ford, did I see your hand up? And
Yes, but it was for the same request.
terrific. And then for the record, I thought I'd let the existing council know we are going to be looking at the ad hoc commission that we talked about previously on the June 22nd agenda. So we're talking about that. So that will be a future agenda item as well. And with that, I don't see any other requests. So we will move on to our regular agenda. And item number 10A, consideration of a resolution granting a commercial cannabis permit to Drops Cali, allowing cannabis manufacturing and distribution activities at 351 Alder Avenue. And this will be Mr. Housh presenting on it?
It'll be
Mr. Harris.
Senior.
Mr. Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is John Paul Harris. and we're discussing a commercial cannabis permit tonight. And this would go to Drops Cali. Drops Cali is in the business already. They are an Oregon company currently. They're looking to expand in California. And they make cannabis edibles. Next slide, please, Lauren. Just for some background that I always like to give when we're talking about cannabis permits, in November 7th, 2017, the Cotati voters passed Measure G. This established a cannabis business tax. Then following, in February 13th, 2018, the City Council adopted Ordinance 883. This established the parameters for personal cultivation on residential properties. It also established location and regulations for commercial cannabis activity. And it set limits on the number of different commercial cannabis businesses within the city limits. Since February of 2018, the City Council has granted permits to 16 potential businesses. Of those 16, 10 are operating or making progress towards an operational business. 6 of the permits either expired with no business being established, or they were withdrawn or abandoned by the permittee. Next slide, please. And then this is the breakdown. We have currently 4 cultivation permits that are active within the city. We have 5 manufacturing permits, and we have 2 storefront retail permits. And then also in that manufacturing, that kind of middle section, that also includes standalone distribution as well as a non-storefront retail, which so delivery only. And we have one of those. So after, if you award the cannabis permit tonight, there will be 1 remaining cultivation permit and 1 remaining manufacturing / distribution permit. Next slide, please. So Drops Cali, as I mentioned, they're an existing business in Oregon. They are intending to operate at 351 Alder Avenue, which is in the commercial industrial zoning district. This is right near the city's corporation yard. The building that they would be operating in is 7,133 square feet, so a fairly modest sized building. And that building, I don't have a site plan to share with you because the site plan I do have has sensitive security information on it, but it's an open floor that's been divided into various rooms for cooking, packaging, storage, and order fulfillment and shipping. So Drops Cali is requesting 2 permits, all under one guise, but it would involve 2 state licenses. One is a Type 6, which is level 1 manufacturing. This is manufacturing without the use of volatile chemicals. And they're in the business of making basically candy, gummy candies that are infused with cannabis extract. And as well, they would need a distributor license so that they can distribute their products to other licensed retailers or distributors. One way to think about them is really they are a food and beverage product manufacturer, of which we have a few in the city. The only thing that makes them unusual is that they infuse their products with cannabis. And because they do infuse the products with cannabis, they're required to get this license. The product that they use, so they don't use bulk biomass. They use extract that has already been extracted by another company. So they purchase that cannabis extract, and then they use that in the manufacturing of their particular food products. And then actually speaking with some of the retailers that we have here in town, what I'm learning is edibles are by far, I guess, from what I've been told, by far the largest selling product. This is while people are choosing to get their cannabis use. It is a permitted use, so all they need is the city council to approve their business license to operate a cannabis facility. And also we did notice all the neighboring properties. That notice was mailed on May 24th. We have received no comments on that letter. And next slide, please. And just so that you're aware of where this building is located, it is right here. Lowe's would be just down towards the bottom right, just outside the view of this image. Highway 101 is running along the right side of this image. And next slide, please. And so the staff is recommending that you adopt the resolution granting a commercial cannabis permit to Drops Cali. That resolution is on packet page 47. And I'm available for any further questions or discussion. As well, I noticed that Stuart Wilson, who is the principal of Drops Cali, is also attending tonight as an attendee. So you can direct any questions or comments to him as well. With that, I'll close. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, you said Mr. Wilson was available. Mr. Wilson, was there anything you would like to add to that presentation by Mr. Harris?
I think you guys can probably hear me now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. We're super excited to be part of the Kotati community. We have been doing this a while in Oregon, first as a farm. We're not going to plan to do that right away in California. There's a reliable supply, and we would never process in this facility. If we farm, it would be just farm on a farm and then make candy. We don't process oils in Oregon either, and we have no intention to. But we are farmers, first and foremost. We've been farming for 30 years and started farming cannabis in 2016 when it became legal in Oregon to do so. We started Drops Candies really 2 years ago. Worked with a big wholesale distributor manufacturer in the beginning, but for the last year and a half have been self-distributing, manufacturing, and that. We have in Oregon right now, we're up to around 40, a little more than 40 employees. We start everyone at a really good wage. Everybody shares equally in bonus structures, and everyone's full-time. We would anticipate doing that same model down in California and hiring locally and really respecting the employee. We also respect the customers. We feel we offer a really great product at a great value. So we feel that's also an important value of ours. And I'd be really happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. At this point, I'll open it up to the council if they have any questions they'd like to ask. Councilmember Ford.
Just one question about, so if the company is primarily in Oregon to date, is Drops Cali going to be a new company, like a spin-off company, or are you operating as one? Yeah. Or does Cali not refer to California?
Well, it does. I'm not sure how I feel about the name, but it's an LLC. We'll be branding this under Drops. We want Drops as it expands across the country, if that's in the future. California is our second state. It's our neighbor state. We feel kinship to California. We really like California. Drops LLC Oregon wholly owns Drops Cali, and the brands, the products will be as similar as we can make them. And that includes, price and inputs and quality of inputs and recipes and everything else. So I own the majority of Drops Oregon. both my adult children own a large portion, and then we've got two friends who are a smaller part of it. And then, like I say, Drops Oregon owns all of Drops Cali.
Great, thanks.
Councilmember Harvey.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. This question is probably for Mr. Wilson. And thank you for the great application. It covered almost everything that one could ask for, so appreciate the thoroughness of that. I just have one question, just a clarification on the staffing. It says in here that you'll hire locally to fill the operations and management roles. Will you be bringing in employees from your other operations, or is your plan really to hire and recruit all local employees? I just wanted a little bit of a clarification on that, if I could.
Well, there's a few people in Oregon who have expressed interest in moving to California. They are, familiar with our operation. They could certainly help us get started in a positive way. And we like to accommodate employees when they want to do things. And so I think they'd be good members of the community as new members, but we predominantly will be hiring from California. We a year and a half in, we've been growing really fast in Oregon. Filling spots there has kept us busy. And most people are, they're held down by their partner's jobs or anything else. So for practical reasons and for holistic reasons, we would rather come down here and start afresh and bring in people from the local community.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
And JP is the reason I wrote a good application. He's very nice to him. So thank you for your help.
Vice Mayor Lemon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there's a question for Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson, you mentioned hiring locally. I appreciate that. We certainly like hearing that. I wanted to confirm, are you proposing to, or would you agree to have a local hire preference? This is something we typically ask for most of our newer businesses, certainly our canvas businesses. Whereas all other things being equal between two applicants, if one of them lives within the city of Cotati and the other does not, that you would give a preference to that local person. I imagine that would be something that would happen often, but if it did, I would certainly love hearing about that.
Yes, we would prefer to hire locally. I mean, it's better for the person to live locally, and I think it's better for the community that they come from the local community. So, all things being equal, that's an easy yes. Again, I think it's better for the employee too. It's, commutes are lower and everything else. We take the whole employment thing very seriously. When I mentioned we're only full-time, everybody, it doesn't matter what job you have within Drops, we have the bonus structure that pays out quarterly. That quarterly bonus structure has, it ranges from 5 to 15% of their annual salary. For the year and a half we've been in business, we have achieved the 10% target or better every quarter. And so if you're packaging or you're making candies or you're a sales rep or you're an executive, it doesn't matter. You get, you've been getting 10% or more of your annual salary every quarter. And that is in addition to a nice salary for everybody. So, we think having, happy employees means productive employees. And it's also our obligation. You're in business to, it's the one great thing you can do as business is treat your employees really well. And we continue that to the customer too. We feel that strongly about it in terms of the customer. We want to sell at a price that represents a really good value and make good product. And what's left is profit, and we like that too. But you gotta do the first two things first.
Well, Mr. Wilson, thank you. You certainly hearing this, all the more looking forward to having that opportunity for our local constituents. So I appreciate your willingness to give a local hiring preference to Cotati residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have one question, and I don't know if this is applicable, and maybe Mr. Harris can answer this, or Mr. Wilson. Since this is a edible product, does this come under the Department of Public Health at all? As a food manufacturer?
Yes, they will have to apply and also receive a permit from the Sonoma County Department of Health Services.
Okay.
Yep.
And then if we're in the neighborhood, will we be smelling candies being manufactured?
Well, no, unfortunately, I'm sorry. That we do use only natural juices or essential oil extracts. But just like the terpenes, the cannabis, we put them in at the very last second so that they don't cook, and preserves the integrity of them. And so you got to get right down there to smell that jelly. But if you want to come visit, you can smell them.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just wanted to add that Sonoma County Department of Health Services did review the application, and they included a condition, condition number 24, which is on packet page 50, if you did want to review that condition. But essentially directs Stewart or Drops Cali to initiate and receive initiate the application process and get a permit from the Department of Health Services.
Thank you very much. It does not look like we have any further questions from the council at this time. I will open it up for public comment if there are any.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. It appears there is no public comment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, thank you very much. Paul, thank you very much for that. JP, thank you very much for that presentation. And now I'd be open to entertaining a motion on this.
I move that we adopt a resolution granting a commercial cannabis permit to Drops Cali.
I'd be happy to second that.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Harvey.
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes, thank you very much. Let the record show it's a 5-0 vote. Thank you again, Mr. Wilson, and best of luck on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to regular agenda item B, 10B, updated Kessing Ranch Affordable Housing Agreement incorporating the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County as the owners of the affordable housing units, incorporating a local preference policy into the documents and finalizing the sales prices of the homes. And this one is Mr. House, I'm assuming.
You're correct, Mayor Moore. Thank you, sir, and members of the council. As identified, the item before the council this evening is an update to the adopted Kessing Ranch Affordable Housing Agreements. We'll go to the next slide, please. So Kessing Ranch is a 47-unit single-family residential project at the intersection of Old Redwood Highway and Valparaiso Avenue, under construction. And it was originally a 9.83 acre parcel that was subdivided into a number of parcels to construct these homes, and all those homes are currently under construction. In keeping with the inclusionary requirements of the city, the developer is constructing 7 below market rate or BMR affordable housing or affordable homes on the site. We'll go to the next slide. There's some background here and in the staff report. One thing that's not mentioned is the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County was created in 2002 to establish a land trust affordable housing model here in the county. There was not one located here prior to them. In 2009, the project was approved as a 64-unit residential project. Right after that approval, began conversations with the original developer to make changes. Those took a number of years. Multiple extensions were granted. And then in 2017, 2018, an updated project was approved to reduce the lots to 47, and then the number of inclusionary units was settled on 7. That map was finalized, the subdivision process was finalized in 2019. Richmond American Home acquired the project and began construction. And then in December of 2020, the original affordable housing agreements were signed. And I would just describe those as kind of a more typical, almost generic affordable housing agreement, which implemented the city's affordable housing requirements, which specify affordability levels and the length of the affordability, which is required at 30 years here in the city. But doesn't really speak to what happens after those homes are sold to those initial buyers. And then just recently, last month, Richmond American Home pulled the building permits to construct those 7 affordable housing units. We'll go to the next slide. I just wanted to include a site plan showing kind of the layout of the project. Valparaiso Avenue is on the right side of your screen, with Old Redwood Highway being just off the screen to the right side of those lots, 18, 19, and 20 and 21. It kind of shows the layout, how some of the streets are connecting. And then if you advance the slide one more time, Lauren, it'll identify those. That's the location of the 7 affordable housing units to be built. 6 duet units and 1 standalone single-family home. Then we'll go to the next slide. So the affordability agreement that's proposed, the changes before the council this evening, maintain the affordability levels, 2 very low income units, 2 low income units, and 3 moderate income units. That was in the original approval. I'm sorry, the maximum flexibility is a typo. I'm sorry, I updated the PowerPoint, but it does meet the requirements of the inclusionary ordinance, which specifies that the unit should be pulled from each category and based on the RENA allocations of the city. It does include a local preference clause for Cotati residents and employees. I originally had included a clause that expanded to folks who have children in the Rancho Cotati School District. However, the attorneys for Kessing and the Housing Land Trust had some concerns over that, so that local preference element has been stripped out of the agreements that are before the council tonight. If there's an interest in continuing to expand on that, staff is happy to spend some time with the city attorney exploring where the boundaries of that local preference live. It's very complicated legislation that's been influenced by a lot of case law, and so we would definitely want to kind of spend some time with the attorney's office. And this is the typo. I wrote it originally thinking that our affordability terms here in Cotati are 55 years, but they're actually 30 years as identified in the staff report. This agreement, because it transfers the ownership of the units to the Housing Land Trust, who then provide a long-term lease, a 99-year lease to the buyers of the homes, actually makes that deed restriction as affordable in perpetuity. So a real benefit there. And then from the staff perspective and kind of the city perspective, bringing in a land trust is a huge benefit because of both their model, the perpetuity model, but then also just allowing us to leverage their expertise. They are affordable housing folks. Currently, the city does not have any staff that are kind of tasked solely with managing affordable housing. That kind of falls on our department, but we do have limited resources. And so bringing them in is seen as a huge benefit to kind of leveling up the expertise that's available to us as a partner within the city. The Housing Land Trust also assists the developer with marketing and sales, vetting the applicants, providing and kind of running down some of the financing for those folks to be able to purchase those homes, and then also long-term stewardship, as we've already mentioned. And then city staff does see this as implementing the housing element and department goals to improve the city's affordable housing program in general. And so we just see it as a win-win. Really appreciate Richmond American's patience and the Housing Land Trust's efforts to kind of work with us to bring these documents before the council and make these changes. We do see it as a benefit all around, but it was some back and forth and some additional cost and staff time on the side of both of those two organizations. So we really appreciate their efforts. With that, we'll go to the next slide, which is just the recommendation by the department that the city council review the proposed affordability agreements for Kessing Ranch, vote to approve the proposed agreements in the form and delegate the signing authority to the city manager. There's not a resolution, so this is just a motion and a vote, and then the city manager will execute those documents as the attorney reviews them and they become finalized. And with that, I'm available for any questions. John Bayless, Vice President for Richmond American, is on the line, as is Dev Getches, the Director for the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County. And I believe Dev, at a minimum, wants to say a few words, and John may as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hodge. Dev, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff, and members of the public. My name is Dev Getches. I'm Executive Director of Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County, and I am just delighted to be here. Thank you so much for bringing us in as a partner to create workforce housing opportunities for homeownership, so we can, as a community, recruit and retain our local workforce that are otherwise priced out buying homes in our community. The people we serve and house are the fabric of our community, and the homes will be affordable in perpetuity. So this one-time generous investment into a home is going to actually serve generations to come. We are looking forward to qualifying buyers based on the city's criteria, delivering those to the builder so they can sell the home, and then ensuring that they are again affordable in perpetuity. We will then steward the homeowners and the home, the land, staying in touch with our homeowners every single month and continuing the counseling, the education that really is necessary for first-time home buyers so they can be successful homeowners. And then at resale, we will qualify people again so that they can enter into homeownership and the sellers pay it forward. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the program.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gotches. Mr. Bayless, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Just wanted to say that Richmond American is happy to participate in this program. We do have 7 homes here. There are 3 and 4 bedroom homes. There's 6 duets and 1 single family detached. And they are all under construction. The slabs will pour in the next 10 days and they should be delivered before the end of the year.
Thank you so much. So it looks like we have some questions from council. Councilmember Ford?
Sure. A couple questions. First, an easy one. Is duet a new name for duplex?
It is similar, but it's a feat that it is usually a duplex has 1 ownership and a duet has 2 separate lots. So they just are touching with the garage.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. And then just a little, I want to make sure I'm clear on the Housing Land Trust's model. So as I understand it, the Housing Land Trust doesn't maintain ownership of the home. It maintains ownership of the land, and the resident buys the home. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
So at the close of escrow, the developer, the builder, will deed the land to the city. Then the land trust will be deeded the land by the city. We will hold it in trust for the public benefit, and we will sign regulatory agreements essentially promising that the land will be used for one purpose only, and that is for the house that sits on it to be affordable to a targeted income level. And it is our responsibility to ensure that the home is owner occupied by a qualified buyer as set by the city in terms of your criteria. Think of us as adjunct staff to promote your own housing goals.
Great. And so another question about the model at resale. So one of the benefits of the model is that the resident actually gets to build some equity by participating in the real estate market, right? But what if the new value of the home exceeds the affordability level that home is deeded to? Does Housing Land Trust have some way to cover the difference for the new sale, or how's that work?
Actually, the model is very self-sustainable because the only index that the sales price is tied to is the income. So it's tied to the AMI, and as AMI rises, the new sales price is based on the increase in area median income. So no additional subsidies ever required.
Okay, so the equity that a resident can accrue is limited by the AMI increase?
Yes.
Okay.
And the idea is people are going to be able to stop renting, start owning.
Right.
They will capture the appreciation of AMI, and they will definitely capture their debt reduction, whatever they've paid off. We've had 20 resales, and our families have been able to move on to market rate homes, and we haven't lost that workforce in our community.
Great. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lemon.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree. Having the deed restriction is a huge benefit, and being able to stretch that from 30 years to essentially perpetuity, obviously better. And certainly pleased to work with the Housing Land Trust. I had just one simple question. One benefit that was mentioned in the packet on page 55 caught my eye, and that's having the land trust involved in the ownership helps ensure that there will not be title errors or other sorts of mistakes that might allow one of these below market rate units to be sold at market rates. And I was just curious, this sounds like the voice of experience talking. I've seen some smiles, yeah, not alone.
Yes.
Is this the type of thing that's happened here in other locales? And would I be right in assuming that once that happens, it's harder to get that back where you want it to be?
Yes, that's correct. And so that's one of the benefits of the program is you can't, really sell your house under the cover of night, if you will, quote unquote, if the land is not owned by you, right? So there has to be an absolute involvement of the land trust at resale. So we directly manage the resale. So there's no chance of the house being sold or something being missed when we are directly involved. And having a relationship with our homeowners, being in touch with them every month, and working with them and delivering stewardship throughout the year, on property taxes, on maintaining your home. There's all kinds of things that we do with our families, down to block parties. I mean, all of those things really are to maintain the trust, the conversation, and the relationship so that people reach out to us when they have anything that they want addressed as their homeowners.
No, I could see having the ownership status through the Housing Land Trust certainly seems important to me, because I can see without that structure in place how there would be a tendency for someone to want to try and sell this unit at market rate down the road. So that in and of itself is a huge selling point. Thank you, Deb.
Yes, and that has happened, you're correct, under other programs.
I don't see any other questions from the council at this time. I do have a couple questions. When you talk about the city would take the deed of the affordable homes and then deed it over to the Housing Land Trust, is there a contingency as a co-deeder? Because, dare I say it, God forbid, but if something should happen to the Housing Land Trust, what would happen in that situation?
That is an excellent question. And even in situations where we acquire a land and then make homeownership available to families in a city, we still go to the city and say, add this to your housing stock. And please, let's sign the Affordable Housing Agreement and the Performance Deed of Trust, because the city is a safety net. And should something happen to us, this public asset needs to be protected. So should something happen to us, then the city would administer the ground leases, which means that the owners in those homes that have homes upon those parcels will not be disturbed, will be stewarded, and the city has the option to either administer the ground lease in-house or assign it to another nonprofit of your choice.
Thank you.
Oh.
And then the only other question I have is more of a comment. Should the council go ahead and authorize this, I would hope that we would be there for the ribbon cutting on these units.
I think that's a conversation to have with John, and
We can
if
give
you would like to
a
do that.
schedule for the first move-in. Yep.
That'd be terrific.
Yep.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Deb and John. Not seeing any current questions from the council, I will open it up for public comment if there are any citizens' comments on this.
Mayor Moore, we currently have no attendees.
Thank you very much. Well, I think it's wonderful, and I'm glad that the Housing Land Trust is going to assist us with that and keep that in perpetuity, all things being equal. And with that, I would be willing to entertain a motion.
Mayor Moore, could we make comments before that? Would that be possible?
It's too late, I asked for a motion. No, certainly, you can make a comment.
Sorry. So yeah, I am so glad to see us moving in this direction for our affordable housing because, you know, as was pointed out by the Vice Mayor, we have lost some homes because we don't have the resources to manage this. So I'm so glad that there's, you know, going to be resources now to do that. And the other thing about this model that I really liked had to do with, you know, how they treat these homeowners, that they provide that counseling and that help with getting their loans and the education about caring for their properties. It's a whole package approach to home ownership. And I agree with Deb, you know, sometimes, you know, new homeowners don't necessarily know all of the ins and outs, and it's so wonderful that they are there as a resource for these individuals. So I think this is a perfect step in the right direction if we vote for this with our affordable housing stock. So thank you, Mayor Moore.
Certainly. Councilmember Ford.
Yes, I want to echo what Councilmember Harvey said. I'm really grateful to both the developer and HLT for entering this agreement and hopefully setting a sort of precedent that this is how we handle inclusionary units going forward. Another benefit, I think, is to the homeowners. I live in an inclusionary unit that I was eligible for as a new faculty member here at Sonoma State, and it is, even the idea of selling my home is really daunting with the deed restrictions that are there. So if the Housing Land Trust was, not that I want to sell my home, but I have some neighbors who have looked into it and decided not to sell and move up because the deed restrictions are too daunting to know what to do with. Like, how do I find a low-income buyer, for instance? So I think that there are all kinds of benefits to this arrangement. So thanks for being willing to do it, both of you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I don't have too much new to add beyond what's been said. I just wanted to say I'm extremely happy to see this going forward, and I wanted to thank everyone involved for their hard work.
Thank you.
Mayor Moore, did you still want a motion?
If you are so inclined to provide one, Councilmember Harvey, that would be great.
Okay. I make a recommendation that we approve and authorize the city manager to execute an amended affordable housing agreement with Richmond America Homes to bring the Housing Land Trust of Sonoma County into the ownership structure of the affordable housing units at Kessing Ranch Development, substantially in the form of the attached as approved by the city attorney. And number 2, authorize the city manager to approve and execute any additional documents meeting the form and intent of this approval. Wow.
I'll second that. Councilmember Ford.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Burgess, would you kindly do a roll call?
Councilmember Harvey.
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Noah, Deb, and John. We look forward to that coming to market. Thank you very much. Now we will move on to item 10C, the adoption of a resolution approving the fiscal year 2020, 2021, 22 budget. And I'm assuming, Ms. Porter, this would be yours.
Yes, this is all me. I mean, no, it's a city effort, but I will do the presentation this evening. So good evening, Mayor, council members, fellow staff, and future members of our community that are going to watch this. So tonight we're presenting to you our proposed budget for fiscal year 2021-22. 22. So as outlined in the budget development process section in this whole gigantic budget book, so that's on packet page 165, this budget process is really a never-ending cycle. Once you finish one cycle year, you're into the next, and it all starts with our strategic planning sessions, which we're going to jump into again here soon, looking forward to in next March. But for this budget session, it started back in March 16th, 2021, when we started our strategic planning sessions, talking about our goals and objectives. And from there, we jumped into the details and nitty-gritty numbers in the budget study sessions on April 20th and May 18th. And then staff has worked really hard and diligently in preparing the full budget document and bringing it to you for council adoption, hopefully tonight, June 8th. So, as I stated earlier, the key part of this is really the strategic goals and objectives and setting that forward. And during this year, City Council decided on some revised goals and objectives for the city, which are fully incorporated within this budget book, beginning to end, going all the way through, you know, where the city is, where we're going, what our strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities are, as well as the individual department goals are then tied directly into these objectives. So an overview of the presentation is really about what's changed since those budget study sessions, since we did go into such detail. And rather than going over the full 200-page document as provided in the agenda as well as presented online, I just want to provide an overview of what's changed, and the big pieces of that are the online budget book, providing that budget summary, those last changes that we had that we discussed, we didn't know where numbers were coming in, and we'll talk about those, as well as the big changes, again, the capital funds and projects, because at our last council meeting, we adopted some changes and expedited some projects, so that moved some funding sooner rather than later. And so that's part of our 5-year CIP plan. I'm going to try this out and see if I can take you on a quick adventure to our new online budget book. Lauren might have to help me in a second. So I'm going to see if it clicks, if it opens up, but it does. You got it, Lauren? There you go. So this is our new online budget book. It incorporates all little pieces of our PDF previously, which is very flat, not immersive, but it has all of those individual sections. So individuals can come in here, get their message from their city manager, as well as go in and dive in to see who their elected officials are. This is directly manageable. You can look through it, go into the different graphics, anything that's of interest to you. You are really the driver of what information you want out of the city. If you need to know more about what's happening in the police department, what their goals and objectives are, what the funding is for personnel costs. We all have those different pieces that are available now. And for those who are more print oriented or want something to be able to take, rather than having a bunch of printed documents around or say, hey, come to City Hall and I'll provide you a printed document, they can go ahead and create their own specialized budget book by selecting what sections they really want to and making their own budget book. It goes directly to your email address. You pick what sections and it creates your own table of contents and formats it in a consistent and good manner. Some other key parts of this and why it's great for our community. Cancel. I'm just going to minimize this, Lauren. Is it, again, provides transparent and personalized information for every one of our community members. This is what they're interested in. Again, they have their things that they want to know about. They want to know about what capital projects are happening on their streets. They want to know about what's happening with their water bills. And so this gets them into that information that they really want on demand at that point in time without going through a huge document. It also helps us incorporate the GFOA best practices for budgeting. So they're continuously pushing our communities, our cities, counties, governments to putting out the best budget documents possible. And this budget system automatically allows you to make sure and check all those individual areas where we can push ourselves a little bit harder to providing the best document possible for our community. It also allows for some efficiencies. With our new Encode 10 system, we've developed our full budget numbers within our general ledger system, our accounting system, and those are directly imported. There's no altercations, there's no changes, manipulations using an Excel file and using different systems. It all is directly uploaded, and the one number matches the same number because nobody else is in there managing and manipulating it. So that the ability for error is almost completely minimized. So it's definitely a lot more comforting having a document that I know reflects what I've brought to you in the first place. On to the next. So that's the biggest piece of it. So what's gone into numbers? What's in the budget book? What's changed? So general fund and the water and sewer funds, we are maintaining the reserves that are required. We have that 25% reserve. We're far exceeding it with a 65% for fiscal year 2022. The water and sewer funds, again, we're exceeding the excess reserve of that 33% operating expenses. Some of the changes, revisions in the general fund that happened in the operating expenses since our budget study session. We are staffing for new vacant positions. So we had some revised draft costs as well. So we talked a little bit about insurance costs. They're still coming in. We still don't have final numbers. We were hoping to have them ready for the preparation of this budget, but we got revised, updated, and so we did include those revised, updated numbers for insurance to allow for even a little bit of a buffer in case things do come in a little bit higher than what was revised back to us. As discussed earlier, we revised those transfers ins and transfers out for the 2 different fiscal years due to pushing forward some capital projects, primarily the roof project. We pushed that forward at the last council meeting, and so we again needed to adjust where the funding is coming from and which fiscal years. And so again, using this system, it was easy enough to go in there, move numbers from one period to the next period for council's approval, and revise those budget numbers to make sure we had the best numbers possible. We also did, based on discussions with our consultants, updated our sales tax projections. At our first budget study session, we talked briefly about some unknowns around what's happening with significant warehouses. And so we got some better tax projections for sales tax, and so those were incorporated as well into these final general fund revenues numbers. Lastly, the water and sewer funds revisions, really not significant. It's the same insurance because those are allocated costs, as well as vacant positions that are in those departments or funds. So the big last piece is our capital project summary. So not only did we get to incorporate what we had budgeted for 2021 or estimating for 2021 and all those great accomplishments, like investing $3.1 million in capital projects in a period of COVID. We were able to really facilitate a lot of projects and leverage a hungry workforce to get some decent work done within our city. And now we're going to pivot that to continuing focus on projects going forward and injecting some funding into the street projects, mainly the West Side street projects, and continuing focus on emergency preparedness projects that are going to facilitate the whole safety of our community. And with the 5-year CIP, we're also able to look to the future incorporated within our financial budget. So this is something we previously had kind of hosted side by side and said, okay, well, we'll incorporate in our budget in future years. So we'll look at it in future years. But this really allows us to see, okay, where is this funding going to come from? Yes, we know we're going to plug general funds and they're going to do some of it, but really this gives us a bigger picture into the next, 3 years going forward as to what the funding sources and projections are going to be needed for those funding sources for those future capital projects, because we want to continue to make those investments in our community. And again, and I say it in here, we also want to have those projects ready for federal grants and matching opportunities as well. We have the projects ready it's more able to get those matching funds and leverage other dollars that are available. So in conclusion, I know this is quick for a 200-page giant packet production, but this really is a prudent budget. It is very much the same budget that we've presented before, just in a completely different format, and we're really proud of it. We know it has some rough edges, but we're really looking forward to getting it finalized and formalized and out to our community in a more manageable way. We're looking forward to, again, applying for our GFOA and CSMFO budget awards and being able to tout how accessible we are to our community. The estimated reserve, as said, we're at 65% for our general fund, as well as the water fund and sewer fund are over the 40%, and water fund's almost at 50% estimated ending fund balance. And we're committed to exercising prudence and integrity with these budget funds, and we will continue even after this is adopted. This is an iterative process, and every time something comes to council, we will have budget adjustments. We will continue to evaluate and make sure that we're in good standing with our funds. So that's where I open it up to questions.
Ms. Corder, that's quite a lot of information, and that's a significant packet. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into that. I think it's great with you and your staff providing that. I really think the creating your own budget booklet is a fantastic idea for those folks that want to access that and then streamline it to whatever their particular area of interest is. So I think that's great. With that, I will go ahead and open up to the council members. Councilmember Harvey.
Yes, I had, although it was a reading assignment for me because the print was so small, I had quite a few questions and spent some time with Angela getting those questions answered, and she was able to, and probably because of the new system and everything, able to answer each and every one of my questions, you know, extremely quickly. So I appreciate the time spent with me to do that, and my questions were answered. I do have one item that I would like to discuss with the council, and that has to do with the budget item for the canine contributions. So if we could discuss that a little bit, I would appreciate that. It's sitting here at $5,000 for contributions, and if I look over the history of how that's happened, it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel like a realistic number, because what ends up happening is that the contributions aren't made, and we ultimately end up having to fund that through the general fund. And so I would like to discuss the possibility of us putting in a more realistic number in that, and recognizing that we will continue to support that from the general fund, but I'd rather be upfront and more transparent about that. So those are my comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can interject really quick, I think when we, in evaluating it, I kind of come to a conclusion that approximately 1,500 was on average what was coming in as donations. So just for informational purposes, for your discussion.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. So the ClearGov product is great. I found it really easy to navigate. Are you fairly confident that ClearGov is a going concern that's going to stick around, having put all this effort into developing your budget in it?
I do. They are fairly well into, they've developed the budget book. They are now also offering CIP programs that are even more expanded. Their main program to start with, and we had initially looked at a couple years ago, was actually a full budgeting program. So we don't utilize that because we use our own general ledger system to develop our budget. So we're, again, not using multiple systems. But I do not feel they are currently a going concern.
Okay. So they'll be around for a while. Good. And then just a more sort of higher level question. I can find the slide that talks about our strategic objectives that we modified a bit this year and added a inclusion and diversity objective. Can you talk about what role those play in the development of the budget? I mean, we talked a bit about priorities at the department level at workshops. Is that the primary place where they come into play? And if say a citizen looked through the budget, could the citizen identify what in the budget reflects, you know, which of the strategic priorities? Or are there ways to do that?
Yes. Lauren, can you bring up the website again? Do you mind? It might be easier to show. Do you have it up and stuff? And of course, I give up remote control. So, the priorities and issues is where I would go. And so here's a linking of, need to go a little bit slower for here. So each on the vertical is your priorities and both the goals and objectives as by council. And then each of the departmental goals are linked into those objectives. So they're not in any special order, they're alphabetized by department, and they're linked in here as linking to those goals. They're not specific line items, like 1B, 1C, it meets the overall objective of that section, not the individual subsections, because that thought, we discussed about that at department head. It got a little bit too, because it meets multiple. A lot of these meet multiple. So we focused on what is the key objective of this goal in the department tied into the overriding objective as set out by council. And then these also tie in by the little infographics. They're also redundant in the individual department goals. Sorry, Damien, I'm going to show you a picture here. Down on the bottom here. So the infographic is also included within the language of the goals provided here, which goes back to the council goals.
Okay.
So it's not, you know, it's all here, it's linked in, we can show and explain that to community but we thought adding more detail, because we discussed multiple avenues of providing information, saying departmental goal, vision goal for city number 5, and adding more, but we ended up losing the actual goal within the header of the actual goal. So that's kind of how we ended up doing it more graphically than through words.
Great, thank you. Mayor Moore, you're muted.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions from the council at this time, so I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Moore, for our attendees tonight. Go ahead and use your raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in, dial *9. Mayor Moore, that will end public comment.
Thank you. I will bring it back to the council. Councilmember Ford, I had a question when you were talking about budgetary process and being more inclusive and equitable. Are you thinking that in our request for RFPs that we go out, that we might suggest that we consider minority-owned businesses or businesses of that type of nature, or maybe expand our hiring practices beyond being non-discriminatory? I mean, what more would you be looking for in a budgetary arena?
So my question was about how the online budget reflects our new, sorry, I'm forgetting the name, strategic objective of diversity as a source of strength. And so, so what Director Corder showed us was exactly answering that, was showing me where in the online budget system we see that strategic objective reflected. So I was making no comment about suggestions for city operations.
Okay. No, I didn't know if it was something that maybe we needed to look into further down the road, or if we're looking at it in a succinct manner now.
Right. Well, I expect since this strategic objective is new, that all the departments will be looking at it over the course of this year and thinking about, you know, in what ways do our operations reflect this strategic objective, or could they? So I could imagine that you know, HR comes back and proposes ways that we might address some of those issues through our hiring practices or our contracting processes, like you suggested. But I'm not suggesting any of those right now.
Okay, thank you so much. I just kind of wanted to get a clarification on how that tied in. Vice Mayor Landon.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to congratulate Ms. Porter. I'll be honest, I had some concern, actually more of a foreboding when I downloaded the document, and I kept waiting for it to download, and then I saw the size of it. But I have to admit, and this is coming from someone who is not thrilled sitting and reading numbers, it was actually, for a 300-page budget document, a very engrossing read. And I think what I really like about it, this is something we've been developing for some years now, is this isn't just a document with all the numbers, although it certainly has to be that, but it's a wonderful document that gives anybody who wants to look at it a real picture of Cotati as a city, as an entity, as an organization, who the people are, what the history was, where we've been, what we spent on, where we're at now, and what we'll be doing in the future in terms of how we're running things. And you can get into some pretty extreme detail. Likewise, the online interactive document, that's really something different, at least to my experience. And I think that for those who are interested in something like this, I think they'll find it very helpful. So that's all good. So I just wanted to make that statement, and I wanted to reply to Councilmember Harvey's discussion. I would agree with her. I think we discussed this briefly in the past. There was a good reason in the past that when the initial concept of having a canine came up, it was determined that there would be a responsibility for the police department, to do this through donations. And I think that made a lot of sense at the time, and I remain supportive of the way that happened. But we've gotten to a different place now where I'm not sure that's really appropriate or necessary. I have a discomfort given that we've asked the public to support us strongly with Measure S, and they have, to then even, in the most gentle of ways, asking for a little nickel and dime support for our canine unit. I think the unit's proven its value. It may not be an absolute necessity for a small department, but it's certainly a worthwhile adjunct, and it has been useful to us and other departments. And I really do think, given the low cost, it would be better just to move into the 21st century and away from when we originally did this, and just make it part of our regular expenditure. Right? That would be the direction I'd like to see this go. I think it just is more logical, and it prevents a better face to the public.
Thank you. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I also wanted to reply about the canine unit. I have doubts about whether we need a canine unit, and there have been concerns throughout the community about the use of force with canine units, and I think it can be a source of liability, and things can go wrong with canines. So I'll be honest, I don't feel entirely comfortable with the canine unit. That said, I think it does make sense to, if we're going to have it, to fund it properly so we can ensure that the necessary training is happening. So I would be supportive of moving the funding into the general fund.
Thank you. Well, with that, Do we need to make any changes to that to account for Remo?
So if I can just jump in, I think there are two different directions. Either we would need to remove all funding from the K-9 fund and move those expenditures to the general fund, making sure that any of the remaining special revenue funds, which there isn't any because there's been, there might be some lingering donations that came in, so we might have to wait for another expense to come through in order to cover them, but those remaining funds would get pushed over to general fund to refund back to general fund. Or the alternative would be 1,500 would be budgeted for contributions or donations, which would then allow the police department or the K-9 to still continue to have their donation section within their K-9 licensing function or minimal, activity for people who wanted to make contributions to that. They've been doing it historically, and then the remainder would be budgeted from general fund, thus keeping all the expenditures still within a separate special revenue fund, but then reducing or changing the amounts of contributions and transfers in.
And what would be the easiest to administer and most logical?
I think the deciding factor is whether you want to shut down this fund. If you no longer want a separate special revenue fund for canines, for the canine unit, if you want that fully incorporated within the general fund, it is, I would say, almost equally different. We're just changing numbers for the same sections in a revised budget for both of those. So I believe changing the amounts to just to 1,500 and the general fund contributions might be more prudent. Maybe Chief would want to jump in to see what the police department would prefer or sees as actionable.
I would just say probably the simplest thing to do would be to zero out the contributions or reduce them significantly, but keep the fund right now. Because we're going to have some contribution money still sitting there that is dedicated for the K-9 program that we couldn't commingle with the general fund. So we, at least this budget year, we keep the fund open. If the council wants us to, so right now when people license their dogs, they have the option to check a box and donate to the K-9, police K-9. And then we also have just random sort of donations that come in from the community that aren't solicited in any way. So, what we could do is we could just remove the, we can either remove the K-9 donation option from the licensing or just leave it there and people can voluntarily do it or not. But I would recommend that we probably should just reduce or eliminate the contribution revenue expectation. And then if we get any revenue, then we just from whatever source, then we have it and it's in the fund and it doesn't get commingled. But we keep the fund open for now.
Certainly, and the fund is sufficient. Would we need to increase that amount in the budget in that particular fund?
We would just, whatever shows as revenue right now from contributions would just get backfilled by general fund. That would transfer. Yeah.
Vice Mayor Lemon?
Yeah, I was thinking, I mean, the whole, at least for me, the whole thrust of this was to reduce that regular solicitation, no matter how small, of additional funds from the public. So with that, the direction for me that made the most sense was, in essence, removing that as a separate fund and the ability to do it. I'd certainly be open to leaving it open this year while removing the solicitation so we could let the fund gracefully zero out and then perhaps next budget year have it be actually gone if that's more convenient. But I also want, I guess they should ask the chief, that's a good point that Ms. Porter brought up, is there any benefit that I'm missing to the community, to the city, to the police department, of having that donation open, other than the small amount of help that it provided? Because if there isn't, then I'd certainly like to go ahead with just closing that solicitation down through the 2-year process that's been defined. But if I'm missing something, I'd sure be open to hearing it.
Yeah, it's the chief, so vice mayor and mayor and council members. So I will say that Remo is probably my most popular officer, and people do feel good donating to the program, and so I have no issue of continuing that. But to council's point, you know, our citizens, they did support Measure S. So I agree with the city manager's strategy. I think that's a good direction to go. I think we should continue allowing people to donate through the dog licensing program, and then we can take a look at it next fiscal year and see where we're at.
Okay, because my understanding was, what was being proposed was that we're leaving it open this year because we expect to have some straggling in, but the idea was to cease leaving it open for continued donations, so next year we could shut the door with some finality to that solicitation. I'm not sure which one we're going with. Perhaps my colleagues can tell me where they want to go. I would lean more towards wanting to close it. It doesn't make any sense to keep it open, but it's certainly not a crucial issue. Either way it works, either way Remo is going to remain the most popular employee we have probably in the city, and he's going to be well taken care of. But I would agree. I just thought with Councilmember Harvey, it seemed to have more clarity to just say, no, we take care of the police dog and we don't need extra funds from the community.
Member Ford.
Yeah, I would be fine with either of those two directions. I was leaning the other way from Vice Mayor Lamb, and I was leaning towards leaving it on the dog license form because some people like to feel like they're contributing to the canine program when they're licensing their dog. So I was going to suggest reducing the expected donations to $1,000, adding $4,000 to the general fund appropriation of the police department to cover that difference, and leaving the solicitation on the dog license form. But I'd be fine with doing the full $5,000 in the general fund and removing the solicitation too. I just think there's not a harm by leaving it on there, and it is a way for some people to feel a little bit more connection to the city and the police department.
And Councilmember Harvey.
Oh, thank you so much. So, I don't, thank you.
I'm sensing some sarcasm there.
I don't have necessarily an issue with the fund per se open. I agree with Councilmember Ford that some people, it does make them feel good that they can contribute, you know, be it sometimes small amounts. But I do think that we should, like we do on some other revenues, we don't expect it. Putting that in there as a budget amount means that we expect it. So I would lean towards zeroing that out. If we get some, great. It just means, you know, less that we have to utilize from the general fund. But I would rather us support it in totality. And if we get contributions, kind of like other things, we sometimes get contributions for recreation and other things too. Just it's kind of a bonus to get that. But I don't feel that we have the necessity to go out to the public and expect the police department to solicit for donations of an expected amount. So that's where I would lean, is to zero that out and leave the fund and look at it in another, you know, if we get a couple of years where we get none, then it might make sense to get rid of that fund. But if some is coming in, it may make sense to leave that there. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. So, with that in mind, we'll need a motion.
I'm looking around trying to read faces. I could certainly go with what Councilmember Harvey suggested. It sounded kind of right between what Ben and I were talking about, and I thought we were so close I didn't think there was any space in the middle, so this is even better. I'd be happy to move this with that, as she described, zeroing it out but leaving it open to donations if my colleagues are in agreement.
Like we have a consensus? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Burgess, would you take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Harvey.
Yes.
Councilmember Sparks.
Yes.
Councilmember Ford.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to the day when we have a police cat. That would be nice. So now we can move on to item 10D, nomination for regional commissions and committees on behalf of the Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association and City Selection Committee. Mr. Obid, were you going to present on this? Or?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this week, on the 10th, the Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association Board of Directors and the City Selection Committee are going to be making appointments to expired or vacant positions. And as you guys all know, our mayor is the primary voting delegate for the Board of Directors as well as the City Selection Committee, and the Vice Mayor is the alternate. So taking the City Selection Committee appointments first, I would run through them real quick. There's one for the Golden Gate Bridge, Highway, and Transportation District, and there's a letter from Gerard Giudice of Verona Park. There's one position, so that's, I think, pretty straightforward. Local Agency Formation Commission, there's an alternate position to fill, actually, of Vice Mayor Landman's seat. And we have one letter of interest from Patrick Slater of Sebastopol. And then Measure O, Oversight Committee. So there's two positions that the mayors and council members need to fill. In this case, we have 3 letters of interest. One from Councilmember Ben Ford, one from Councilmember Kevin McDonald of Petaluma, and then Sydney Smith from Santa Rosa City Schools, which was kind of unexpected, at least for me. I'm not sure where that came from, but that's in the packet. And then the other 2 that do not have anyone that have put in letters of interest is the Remote Access Network Board and Sonoma County Oversight Board Committee. Of those, really the only one where there's more letters of interest than there are available seats is the Measure O Oversight. And then finally, the Board of Directors is going to make an appointment to the North Bay Division of the League of California Cities. There is here again, a single position, and we have a single letter of interest from John Sawyer of Santa Rosa for the primary position. He's currently, I believe, the alternate there. So that pretty much wraps it up, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think we'll go ahead and run through these one at a time and initially talk about the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District. Are there any comments or concerns in reference to the request for support from our Verona Park Mayor?
I think we did this one right the last time, so I'm happy to support it this time.
Okay. Councilmember Ford?
I was just going to say I am quite happy to support Mayor Giudice.
Okay. Shall we take a vote on each of these particular ones as we go through? Or shall we do it all in one lump sum?
I think we just need to give you direction.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a consensus on Mr. Giudice. Councilmember Sparks, thank you. Okay. Next, we'll move on to Measure, let's see. A local agency formation, alternate position, letter of interest from Patrick Slater of Sebastopol. And a thumbs up for him. Thank you very much. We have the Measure O Oversight Committee, 2 positions, one from illustrious Councilmember Ben Ford, one from Petaluma Councilmember Kevin McDonald, and from Santa Rosa City Schools, Sidney Smith, but without a name. I am inclined, of course, to support Councilmember Ford and Councilmember McDonald. Councilmember McDonald has been working on the continuum of care for the last year and a half. So we
You don't
have.
need to hear my 3-hour campaign speech?
I was going to ask, who is that Ben Ford guy?
Go for it, Ben.
I was just going to point out that I thought the Santa Rosa City Schools letter was odd too. It doesn't even name a person. And so I'm not sure where that came from either.
Right.
Well, this
Councilmember
is
Smart?
the mayor's and council members' appointment. It is odd.
Right.
Well, it never
Thank you. I
hurts
just-
to ask. We only had one submission, perhaps that might have been a way to go. But I would agree with the mayor, supporting Mr. Ford and Mr. McDonald.
Councilmember Sparks?
Thank you. I just wanted to get some background from those of you who've been at this a lot longer than I have. You ever seen something like this before? Someone from an outside agency making a request through this for a seat?
We did have, through the mayor, last time, there was somebody outside the usual customers who put in for MTC. In that particular case, after looking in it, it appeared valid. Nevertheless, it didn't particularly go anywhere. But other than that, in 10 years, no, this is a bit of an anomaly.
Well, and we've never had one where there's not even a person. This is just like, well, we'll send someone.
Yeah.
It seemed almost as though they were suggesting that Eric Lofchi could be the person, but they don't say it.
It's not very explicit, right?
Yeah.
Right. And typically then, Laura, the letter would come from that person, not, yeah. So it's a lot.
Okay, so it looks like we have a consensus for Councilmember Ford and Councilmember McDonald. Thank you. North Bay Division League of California Cities, interest with Councilmember Sawyer from Santa Rosa. We have, looks like 2 thumbs up. 3
Yeah, John
thumbs
has
up
been the alternate for a bit, so I think it's appropriate that he actually get upgraded to be directors.
Okay. So, looks like I have direction for Thursday night. Thank you so much. I can open it up for public comment if we have any public comment on there. I would entertain that at the moment.
For our attendees tonight, please use your raise hand icon if you'd like to make a public comment. That will end public comment.
Thank you very much. Okay. So it looks like we've got direction on that. We're ready to go there. And now it looks like we are on item 11, the city manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So just an update on just emergency type stuff. So as you know, all ages for COVID, all ages 12 and over are eligible for vaccines. In Sonoma County, 76% of eligible individuals over 12, age 12 and over, I should say, are partially vaccinated and 65% fully vaccinated. That's good news, continues to go up. We do continue to be in the orange tier. The case rate kind of inched up a bit to 2.8 per 100,000. We need to be at 2 or less to get yellow, which may be sort of academic here shortly when the governor lifts the whole color tier system June 15th. Also, just reminders again that there's a rental and utility payment assistance for people from prior federal legislation that the county is administering, and those applications are available online. You can get to it also through our website, through the housing assistance on the COVID banner on the homepage. And then with respect to what's going to happen post June 15th, what it appears to be is that most restrictions will lift for members of the public. There's some There's some exceptions, mostly around transit. So like airport terminals, bus terminals, train terminals, those kind of areas where you could have dense concentrations of people, and there may still be masking requirements, at least for some period of time in those types of environments. But generally, for the general public, there will not be does not appear to be any real masking requirements. A little different for employers. Employers fall under Cal OSHA's requirements, and so Cal OSHA's kind of struggling through it right now. They're a little bit behind kind of where the general public's going to be, and there will still be some masking requirements for employers. So it'll be a weird, there'll be a, well, I don't know if weird is the right word, but there will be a transition period where the general public will be unmasked and employees will have to be masked. So it'll be, I do know that the Cal OSHA board is, they set up a subcommittee to try to expedite some of the rulemaking because it is a bit clunky the way it's working right now. And then drought. So we do expect an order from the state by the end of this week. And so likely Monday, the order will lower releases from Lake Sonoma, or reduce the releases from Lake Sonoma. It's expected that there will be a 20% reduction period that will start July 1st. And these would be deliveries, for example, deliveries from the Sonoma County Water Agency from our water wholesale. That's what we will be experiencing locally upriver, especially up in Mendocino County is much more severe because Lake Mendocino is at very, very low levels. Redwood Valley, which is a water district up there, has stopped all ag deliveries, and the flood control district is allocating at 55 gallons per capita per day up there. Marin Municipal, south of us, is apparently 40% mandatory already, which is unbelievable. I mean, to be in an urban area, to be that at that level of restriction. And Marin Municipal Water District is also a mandatory reduction. Some good news that will be coming to the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, I believe it's this Thursday, is some funding for rural properties. So one of the things that's been a challenge is all the cities have pretty robust conservation programs, and they've been putting money into it for like decades at this point, plus the building code standards as well, but decades of money into some of the built environment to really reduce the water use, both indoor and outdoor. But when you get outside the city limits or outside the district limits of the water district, there's no such programs in just the general unincorporated county. So all those people are well users, and they might still have 6 gallon per flush toilets. That is probably not all that uncommon. So starting to get grant money for the rural county is a good start, because with the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, we're all in the same groundwater basin here, and so getting everyone to be using water conserving fixtures is going to be a benefit in the long run to all of us. As was mentioned earlier, Kessing Ranch, all the building permits have been pulled, and the remaining lots are under construction now. And this was sort of, I don't know, this wasn't explicitly mentioned, but between Jamie Lane, which is also under construction now, you guys all saw that recently, but they're grading the site now, and it's under construction. Well, between those two projects, we'll have 12 new workforce affordable housing units administered by Housing Land Trust, and they're going to be accepting applications for new owners in the very near future. So that's big news. On other projects, PG&E, you may have seen them around town. They have 2 relatively visible gas projects. One is on Cypress Avenue, where they're doing a main replacement. And then PG&E is also working on Park Avenue. So at the end of that's parked there at Myrtle, doing some gas work. The local road safety plan, we're continuing to gather public input from the website, analyzing the data. There will be an upcoming public workshop, so we'll announce that soon once we have a date. And wayfinding program, I mentioned earlier that we had put that out to bid, but we only got a single bid and it was too high. So we just rejected all the bids, rejected the one bid. And we're getting ready to rebid that. because we think in our conversations with contractors, the bidding environment's better now. So we're going to put it back out and hopefully get a more reasonable bid this time. We're also going to start the community center roofing project, as Angela mentioned in the budget presentation, and the bird section paving. That's all going to begin pretty soon. We're processing contracts, and so I'd expect them to see some mobilization in the next month out there. And then local hazard mitigation, there will be a public webinar workshop on the draft plans, and that's going to be on June 23rd at 6 p.m. We will get the word out about that. We also do plan, as we mentioned when you heard about the local hazard mitigation plan at council, I do also plan to bring it back, at least the Cotati annex to that plan, on the June 22nd city council meetings, the day before the public workshop. So, so you all and whoever locally that wants to tune into that can listen to it then as well. On the community development world, so Planning Commission, just the following in step with the council, also moved their meetings to 6 p.m. They voted at the last Planning Commission meeting to move their meetings up to 6 p.m. The housing element RFP is now out, so we'll be getting work on that in the not too distant future. Once we get proposals back and rank them, we will be coming to council for a contract award, probably end of summer. ABAG MTC has released the Plan Bay Area 2050 and the associated EIR for public comment, so that's out. And coming up at Planning Commission on June 21st, we have La Plaza View, which is a mixed-use development at the corner of Charles and East Cotati, and they're going to be adding a third floor, a design review for that project. So ground floor commercial with 2 stories of residential. The Reds Dispensary will be coming back to Planning Commission for their design review and objective design guidelines as well. And then lastly, recreation. Last Friday we hosted our spring movie drive-in event. We showed The Little Rascals and had a great time. We do plan to host more movie events throughout the summer, either drive-in or in the park. So depends on how things go with the restrictions. And then this week, the Camp Cotati Summer Camp started and is currently sold out for 6 of the 9 weeks. And this summer, and we're looking to add more spaces to allow a few more campers to attend as staff availability allows. There's a waiting list. In addition to being sold out, there's a waiting list. So also starting this week is Willy Wonka's Children's Theater Camp, and we have 10 campers there. Where children can learn to dance, sing, and perform, and are welcome with any level of experience. So if anyone likes music theater camp, that's a great way to do that. And there's also, because there's going to be more throughout the summer, and we're excited to announce the first ever summer theater in the park, where children will be performing High School Musical Junior and Lion King Kids on the La Plaza stage at La Plaza Park. So the shows will be at the end of June and July, and there'll be more info on this performance times available soon. Farmers markets are back. As I mentioned at the last meeting, they're every Wednesday through the end of September from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. On June 19th, we're hosting our community yard sale again in the Cotati room, and we're accepting yard sale donations on the 17th and 18th. The proceeds from this benefit our recreation programs, and any leftover items are donated to Redwood Gospel Mission. And then we're also running, again, our free summer lunch program for all children ages 18 and under. And this is in partnership with Redwood Empire Food Bank, and lunch will be available at no cost to any child, Monday through Friday at the Ray Miller Community Center between 12 and 12:30. And there's no paperwork to complete. You can show up, no RSVP or registration is required. And you don't have to even be a Cotati resident or a camp participant for the lunch program. And that is it, but if there's any questions on rec stuff, you always can contact Ashley at 665-4222 or awilson@cotaticity.org, or of course, always look at the city's website and social media pages for information. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Obed. Councilmember Harvey?
Yes, Damien, I know that on Saturday, the 12th, with the Water Saving Partnership, there's supposed to be drought kits being given out. Do you have more details on that?
Craig, do you have any details on this? I don't have any.
Okay, I thought it was from 9 to 1, and Katati is one of the areas that will be handing out those drop kits.
That's correct. We will be handing them out from 9 to 1 here at City Hall at the drive-through in front of the community center. And then the Sonoma Water Saving Partnership lists all of the different locations. There's about a dozen locations throughout the county.
Yeah, and county and Marin too, so. But thank you. I just wanted to make sure we got that information out there for folks.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up for questions for the city manager. Thank you, Mr. Oakwood. With that, then we'll move on to city council member reports. Councilmember Ford.
I'll just report real briefly on the Russian River Watershed Alliance, which has basically, their programs are continuing, but it's basically pivoted to helping all of the various agencies coordinate their water saving efforts. So as Damien said, the situation upriver is, north of where the Dry Creek hits the river is worse than it is for us. No deliveries for post-1914 water rights and things like that, and they've noticed all the pre-1914 water rights. So it's getting pretty dire, and we just need to keep an eye out. We may be heading down a more than 20% voluntary path, I would guess. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lyman.
Yeah, that's pretty sobering. I had two things I wanted to report. First of all, I did attend the Veterans of Foreign War, post 37-34, I think it was, on Memorial Day here in Katati. There was an event there. It was short, solemn, and respectful, paying service to servicemen who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Councilmember Linares of Roanoke Park was there as well, along with many members of the public. And for me, it was interesting. It was the very first time in about a year and a half that I had put back on my council member suit and tie and name tag and been out with the public. So I thought this was if I had to pick an event to go support, this was a perfect one. So I just wanted to mention that. And lastly, a piece of good news. I thought the city manager would cover this, but since he didn't, I will mention that we remember discussing funding from MTC through the Quick Strike program for our downtown Katati Civic Center connectivity and safety improvement plan. We had asked for $1,250,000, and we had received about roughly 75% of that. Well, we did push back, and there was an influx of new money coming forward. So thanks to work from the SCTA board, certainly the SCTA staff, I'm happy to report that as of what's being published for tomorrow's Programming and Allocations Committee meeting, the next hurdle that we have to go through is full funding for the city of Katati, as well as, I'm pleased to say, Sebastopol. So that's good news. So we get through that hurdle, and it goes to the MTC board itself, at which point I would hope it's a formality at that point, generally speaking, although I don't want to jinx this. So cross your fingers at the end of the afternoon or the next day after that we hear some good news, and that is something to be very beneficial. Our grant in this case is the highest among all the other grants there, significantly. The only other one that was close was Sonoma County's Mark West Springs program. That was not passed. So congratulations to staff for putting together very quickly a rather large but still competitive streets program. So cross your fingers for that.
Thank you. We will. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I attended on Friday a health action workshop on equity in health, and I don't have anything really actionable to report, but we are continuing to learn more about that, and I'm going to be working hard on it. And then I also wanted to report that you may have heard that there's a group of teenagers and activists from the Sunrise Movement who are marching 266 miles from Paradise to San Francisco, encouraging the state to press for the creation of a civilian climate corps. I think this would be an amazing thing to happen because in Sonoma County we could provide good jobs for people in vegetation management and debris removal, and just could help us become more resilient. So if anyone wants to join me, I'm going to their rally on Thursday because the marchers are coming through on Thursday morning to Santa Rosa, and I'm going to march with them to Cotati. It's about 8 miles. If you want to take the train with me, we can have a nice walk together. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Harvey.
Just really quickly, I'd like to thank the staff for the job they did in putting together the groundbreaking for Jamie Lane. I think the speakers were excellent, and it was a very nice event, and it's good to see those houses start moving. This morning I attended a meeting with Senator Mike McGuire, and he went over some of the budget numbers. In particular, I know it hasn't affected us, but a lot of the cities are reeling from the fact that they've lost so much of their TOT, and with a lot of the communities, it's anywhere from a third to a half of their budgets. So there was some help looking with that, and some help, more funding coming for various homeless aspects. So it was nice to get together with him through the North Bay League, and it's wonderful when we can meet with our state politicians and let them know what's bothering us and where they can help. So appreciate those efforts. And that's all I have, because I'm full of meetings for the rest of the week.
Thank you. And I don't have anything to report out. As Ms. Corder alluded to, we don't have the final numbers on the insurances and the remit, but it's a hard market, so the numbers are up there. And that's all I have at the moment. So that, we'll move on to item 13, public comment on non-action agenda items. I don't even see any attendees, so I don't know that we need to make an announcement, Ms. Burgess.
You're correct, we have no attendees.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any information received after the agenda was posted?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to closed session topics. We will adjourn to closed session. Conference with city labor negotiators, city designated representative, city manager or designee, Cotati Employee Association, and conference and negotiations with the city manager, unrepresented city manager. So it is 7:53. We will adjourn this meeting and go into the closed session and then report back out after that. At 7:58, we will go into the closed session. Okay, thank you. Now we can leave this open and just come back to it for report out.
Yeah, we'll leave this meeting open. We'll just have to log back into it.
Terrific. So it looks like we have Damien there and Lauren is here. Okay. So we are back out of closed session. We have nothing to report out at this time. And we are adjourned, believe it or not, before 10 o'clock at 8:57 p.m. You guys have a good evening, and we'll catch you Thursday. Are you guys all going to be there Thursday?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Have a good night.
Good
All right.
night.
Good night, everyone.